Chapter 5. Is disease a reality or an illusion? Reality has a different meaning from actuality. By actuality is meant the ultimation of an ideal or subjective conception in matter. In that sense, a thing may be real and not an actuality. It is said by Paul that God hath called us from the beginning, or from the first principle of things, the logos, or region of an ideal creation, unto salvation and sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 13. Sanctification of the Spirit is the recognition of the truth that all spirit is a divine substance, and consequently our own spirit, which is the real self, is pure and free from sin and disease. Thus the Spirit of life, which is a Hebraism for the living Spirit, in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. That is, the orderly operation of the Spirit counteracts the effects of the fixed order of the operation of the errors of the understanding and the delusions of sense. Romans 8 verse 2. We attain unto salvation from sin and its consequences in disease and death by the belief of the truth. Now truth expresses that which is, in opposition to that which is not, and which only seems to be. An intuitive perception of supersensuous verities, or of truths which lie above and beyond the grasp of the senses, is the ancient and royal road to health and salvation. Jesus, who is himself the way, and the truth, and the life, affirms that we are made free by the knowledge of the truth. John 8 verse 32. But this is not affected by every truth. The mere common verities, or fragmentary truths, as that 2 plus 3 are 5, and that the angles of a triangle are equal to 2 right angles, do not save us, though they are sacred and useful. There is a supreme and eternal truth, which includes all other truths in it, and the intuition of this has a saving and redeeming power in it. The highest truth in the universe is that God is all, and all that truly exists is a manifestation of God. Ephesians 4 verse 6. The manifested God is the to form of the good of Plato, the Christ of Paul, the supreme and eternal goodness, and all things that have true being are an expression of this. All else is illusion, or a false appearance. Nothing can go forth from God that is not always in God. All that is God, and hence is good. That which is not good is not God, and hence has no existence. All that which is included in God. Disease, when viewed as an evil, has no existence except as an illusion or deceptive sensuous appearance. As such it is a nihility or nothingness. So far as disease is a condition of the body, like all matter, it is only an appearance, a sensuous seeming, an empty show. The general conclusion of modern philosophy is well stated by Lotze, and is only the reinstatement of the old Hermetic science. He says, everything we supposed ourselves to know of matter as an obvious and independent existence has long since been dissolved in the conviction that matter itself, together with the space, by filling which it seemed most convincingly to prove its peculiar nature, is nothing but an appearance for our perception. Metaphysics, by Hermann Lotze, page 438. What we call matter, including the gross material body, has existence only as a false seeming. The supreme reality in the universe is spirit. Another of those great saving truths, the intuitive perception of which has for the soul a redeeming efficacy, is the inclusion of my true being and immortal self in the Christ, or the universal spirit. Every universal is made up of particulars, and the particulars are contained in the universal. Every perfect whole is made up of parts, each of which is in the likeness of the whole, and is an image of it. Thus, the body of man is a collection and aggregation of primary cells, each of which is in the form of the entire body. It is the corporeal unit. So there is a universal spirit, a collective divine man, who is the manifested God, and the Christ, and each individual spirit sustains to it the same relation that the cell does to the human body. The Christ within, which is the particular spirit, as a personal limitation and finite expression of the universal Christ, is an image of the whole, from which it is never sundered. This is the only reality in human nature, all else is illusion. It is the great mystery of the gospel and of godliness, God manifested in the flesh and in my flesh. Of the real self, the Christ within, we may always predicate perfect health and blessedness. The recognition of this sublime and eternal truth, and a steadfast adherence to it and practical belief of it, is an act of saving faith. It is a divine truth on whose head God has placed a crown, and all sensuous delusions will surrender to it and pay it homage. When Christ, who is our inmost and real life, appears to us and in us, then we also appear with him in glory, and share with him the throne of his glory. The man that I am in Christ is a different man from the psychical and external homo, the biped animal, the subject of sin and disease. In the world, That is, in the lower and external range of our existence, we have tribulation, but the man that I am in Christ has peace. John 16, verse 33. No man or religious sect can obtain a monopoly of the great truth that our inner self is included in the being of the manifested God, the universal Christ, any more than a company could be formed with a charter of incorporation investing them with the exclusive ownership of the Son. I own the Son, and the whole Son, and so does every human being. Every man's spirit is, to speak according to analogy, a cell in the God-man and the man-God, and each individual spiritual entity shares the glory of the whole. The universal spirit, viewed as a collective divine human principle, is called the Father of Spirits, as the atmosphere is the parent source of every breeze and every breath. Whatever Jesus thought and said of his relation to the Father, he has taught every human spirit as an immortal Son of God to think and affirm of itself. I and my Father are one, for the whole collective life of spirit circulates through each individual spirit, and as nothing impure, or false, or evil can enter the realm of spirit, or the bosom of the Father, as it is called, so my immortal ego, whose life is bound up in the same bundle of life with the Father, is free from sin and disease. The Father is in me, and I am in the Father. I came forth from the Father without going out of him, just as a thought or an idea is never external to the mind that thinks. I return to the Father without journeying through space, when I become intuitively conscious that in him I live, and am moved, and have my being. The Christ within is the God of the microcosmic man, as the universal Christ is the God of the macrocosm, and thou shalt love the Lord, the God of thee, with all thy heart. Matt 22:37. This divine spirit in most men only overshadows all the lower degrees of our being, like the sun shining above the clouds that conceal him from the earth. If the obstructing vapor becomes etherealized and transparent, then he shines directly upon and into the earth. When the Spirit penetrates and pervades with his life all below it in man, even the corporeal organism, then the Christ comes in the flesh, and the man is an incarnation of God. This is the divine ideal becoming the actual as in Jesus. This is full salvation and perfect health. Another great spiritual truth, having in it a practical redeeming efficacy, is that of the illusion of the senses. The most profound and most transcendental teachings of the Oriental religious philosophies, including Buddhism, Brahmanism, Kabbalistic Judaism, and Esoteric Christianity, are based on the eternal truth that all our sense perceptions are an illusion or deceptive appearance, and our senses never tell us the real truth, but only that which is an inversion of the truth. The directly opposite of the perceptions of the psychical man are true. This is a principle as fixed as that the opposite of darkness is light, and is one of far-reaching practical value. To think rightly, or, in the words of Jesus, to judge righteous judgment, we are to judge and decide directly contrary to the illusory decisions of the sensuous degree of the mind, for it is only in that way that we can come to the cognition of the real truth. This is an established principle in philosophy and constitutes a pathway of solid rock over which we may walk by faith, from disease to health and blessedness. It is the thread of Ariadne which, when we trace it back, conducts us out of the labyrinth of error in which we are imprisoned. It is an uphill and shining way, the path of the just, up which we may calmly walk till we reach that mountain summit of health and holiness, from which we have descended into our present lapsed condition. According to this principle, which is the method of philosophizing called the reconciliation of contradictions, pain is a pleasure misunderstood. The psychical man or mind falsely views it as an evil, and by thinking so, makes it an evil. But pain is always a good, and all good is in its nature and essence pleasant and delightful. This is what all men mean by the word good. A boil is not an evil, much less a disease, but a good thing. When I no longer view it as an evil, but a good, then the pain ceases, for all good is a pleasure. A thins is to us what we think and believe it to be. In accordance with the principle we are discussing, loss is gain, disease is health, sorrow is joy, and death is life. Disease is an effort of the divine life principle in us in the direction of true health. Nausea is only an effort of nature, the divine Archelaus of Van Helmont, to rid the stomach of something antagonistic to the life principle in us. Hence the action of the stomach is inverted. If this does not succeed, nature intensities and accelerates the natural peristaltic action of the stomach and intestinal canal, and a diarrhea is the result, which is not a disease or an evil, only as we make it so by our way of thinking. It is a device of nature to rid the system of that which is injurious. The body is often renewed and rejuvenated by a fever, and a fever is not a disease, but a remedy. It is not an evil, but a good, and all good is pleasant. As death, according to Swedenborg, is not the extinction of life, but a higher exhibition of it which is called anastasis, or resurrection, so disease, which precedes death and leads to it, signifies that which is progressive to regeneration or newness of life. Arcana Celestia, 62:21. This, he affirms, is the signification of disease among the angels, and consequently it bears this meaning to the higher intelligence of man, for Swedenborg's angels, like Milton's, are only a superior kind of men. Disease is always a remedy, and if as a phenomenon or appearance, it is so interpreted by the light of the Spirit, and not by the darkness and blindness of sense, it will essentially change its nature and effects. What we call sorrow is not so only in name. It is always the memory of a joy that has passed out of present consciousness, but not out of existence. No state of joy or peace or health that we have ever experienced is lost or ever can be lost to our being. It may have passed out of the present consciousness of the soul, but according to the Buddhist doctrine of karma and the Swedenborgian doctrine of remains relics, it is stored up in us as an everlasting inheritance. Our early states of youthful bliss and health, and all the innocent joys of childhood, have not been obliterated from the imperishable tablet of the higher soul, but have only gone to seed and are treasured up in our interiors as living germs, that only need the dews of heaven to cause them to spring up again in a larger harvest. They can be made to emerge into consciousness and be remitted from the interior into the exterior or psychical man. In this sense, by an immutable law of our being, what we have sown we shall sometime reap, and with an increase. The cure of disease in ourselves or others is a recovery or a restoration to the consciousness of the lower soul of that which has passed inward and has been reserved in the interiors of man by the Lord of life, but has not dropped out of existence. To view it in that light is the best way to call it back again. Health is within, and if we look for it in any other place, we miss it. It will be like searching the forest to find a lost child, when he is ailed the time asleep in his chamber. If we had only known where he was to be found, all our search abroad would have been avoided. To cure disease is to restore to the soul that state of health which we mourn is lost, but which is still in the higher apartment of our being. He restoreth my soul, and guideth me in the paths of righteousness, or spiritual truth, for his name's sake. Psalm 23 verse 3. Another fundamental truth of the Hermetic philosophy, and which brings freedom to the soul of man, is that matter, in its reality, like spirit, is exempt from disease and corruption. Spirit and matter are the two extreme links in the chain of existence. They are co-eternal and co-extensive, and equally divine. Like the two forces of the magnet, the positive and the negative, each implies the other, and neither can exist without the other. But we are not speaking of what men in general call matter, but of a divine substance. Between the two extreme links of existence, spirit and matter, the first and the last, the alpha and the omega, the father and the mother, all other existences are situated. The phenomenon which we call matter is but an illusion. It is not substance, but a deceptive appearance. The real body of man is never diseased, for in its essence it is a divine, an indestructible, and immortal substance. It is the bride of the spirit. If the spirit of man is not diseased, and this is admitted, and if the body as to its invisible inward essence is pure and free from disease and corruption, then we ask, what is disease but an illusion of the senses, a false appearance? That ought to count for nothing? It is among the certainties that disease is not the reality it passes current for in an unbelieving world. Matter as the pure cosmic substance, the divine mother principle, is as immortal as spirit, of which it is the correlative opposite and necessary counterpart in the creative balance. What is called dirt and filth is only so to a superficial gaze and shallow way of thinking. What we call filth, in its inner essence, its divine chemistry, is as pure as the diamond, or the precious stones which constitute the foundation of the walls of the New Jerusalem. As filth is not filth except to the stupid gaze of ignorance, and as a false opinion of things is the only dirt in the universe, so disease has existence only as a misbelief. It has existence neither in the spirit of man, nor in the real substance of the body, and as all existence is included in the grasp of these extremes, it must be viewed as non-existent. In the mind-cure method of cure the question will often recur, what is man? And the answer will always be in order, that man is a being, made in the image of God, and only a little while inferior to the angels, and crowned with glory, and honor, and immortality. Psalm 8 verses 4-6. Certainly the outward body, though fearfully and wonderfully made, is not man. For when the mortal coil is shuffled off, nothing has been lost. The five external senses are not man, for these belong wholly to the body. The mind, on the plane of sense, the mere animal soul taken by itself, does not answer to the idea of man. The distinctively human principle is spiritual, immortal, and incorruptible. As disease and sin are in the lower soul, and as this is not man, it follows that these are not predicable of the true self. Man, that is, that which is the distinctively human principle and undying personality, that which is more than an animal, is neither sick nor sinful. When through love and faith, which penetrate to that within the veil, we recognize the good that is in man, and are blind to the evil that is external to the real humanity, it serves to develop that good. It craves recognition, and is in an effort to make itself known. And when recognized in some mind, it strengthens its tendency to an ultimate manifestation. This seems to have been what Jesus did. He recognized good in publicans and sinners, and condemned none, and thus lifted from them the millstone that was sinking them into the depths. In the physical wrecks around him, he beheld only the inner man, and addressed himself to that. When we recognize that in man which is immortal, and consequently never sick, it serves to develop that also. It opens the prison to them that are bound, and sets the captive free. Let's find the sunny side of men, or be believers in it. A light there is in every soul that takes the pains to win it. Oh, there's a slumbering good in all, and we perchance may wake it. Our hands contain the magic wand. This life is what we make it. And when the Christ that is in us is raised from the dead, he dieth no more. Death no more hath dominion over him. For in that he died unto sin once for all. But in that life that he liveth unto God. Even so reckon ye yourselves to be dead unto sin, but alive unto God in Christ Jesus. Romans 6 verses 9 to 11. Reality expresses what is. Illusion is what only appears to be. The human body is not man, and its diseases are no part of our true humanity. Owing to the dominating influence of the senses, we accept appearances for realities and take the shadow of man for the man himself. This is the fundamental error of the world. But when a man, suffering from disease, sees through the glimmering light of the supreme knowledge that the external body is not the self, but is the most unreal thing in human nature, and that his disease is outside his immortal self, it is like returning light to the blind, or like the first break of day after the long Arctic night. In a fragment of the books of Hermes, it is said, mundane things, which include the body and its maladies, are not themselves real, but only the simulacra of reality, and not all are even such. Some are but illusion and error, fantastic appearances, mere phantoms. When such an appearance receives an influx from above, then, indeed, it becomes a similitude of the real, but without this superior influence, it remains an illusion. In the same way, a portrait is a painted image of a body, but is not the body it represents. It appears to have eyes, but sees nothing, ears, but hears nothing, and so on of the rest of it. It is an image which deceives the sight. It appears a reality, and is but a shadow. Those who behold not the false behold the true. If, then, we understand and see everything as it truly is, we see the real. But if we see that which is not, we can neither understand nor know anything of the real. End of chapter.